I'm sitting down with Micah, the CEO of LEEF Brands. We are at the manufacturing facility in Willits, California, and we're going to have a chat. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
So let's start with maybe some history about how you got yourself into this business.
Micah Anderson, nice to meet everyone. I've been in the cannabis space for quite some time now. I'm 45 years old. I grew up in California, in San Diego. And when I was younger, I surfed professionally as a kid. So I traveled a lot out of high school and traveling around doing what was called the WQS series. And as part of those travels, I came across some people that were living in, and it's a long-winded story, but I'll get there. You'll understand why. So this is before 1996. So in 1996, there was laws that were passed in California which created the first nonprofit industry for cannabis, a medical act in California. And so right as that act was being created, I was in Fiji working on an island called Tavarua, and I worked with a couple of guys that were early day pot growers in Northern California, right here in Mendocino. And I had kind of dabbled with the cannabis industry just as a consumer, and also my dad grew a little bit of pot in the backyard when I was a kid. And I was fascinated by the story. These guys told me about this place in Northern California, and me being from San Diego, I had no idea. I'm like, what do you mean you grow weed in California? It's like this is back when it was very illegal, and you could get in a lot of trouble for it. So I think I was like 17 years old. I think one of the summers I was wrapping up working in Fiji with these guys, and they were like, you should just come up and check out the area and see what we're doing. And so I did. I came up, I took a job working on one of the farms, and fell in love with the place, everything about it, the industry, dealing with the plants. And so I spent the better part of my life here in Mendocino County building a nonprofit cannabis company. At the time, this was under the Prop 215 rules. And back then, it wasn't, today it's different. Under Prop 64, you have a lot of different license types, and people have really honed in their craft, but in the early days of cannabis, it was like, you kind of did it all, or at least I did it. I grew, I did distribution, I learned early days extraction practices. And then I got some of my family members into the business. So my dad, my uncle, my cousins, my mom, my brother, everyone was involved with it. And we had dispensaries and retail locations in Southern California, and we did all of our cultivation up here. And I managed about 10 farms at I think the height of when I had the most of them, between Mendocino and Humboldt County. And as Prop 64 kind of came close, this was 2017, I believe. 2016 was when Prop 64 was passed. And I made a concerted effort to, I wanted to participate in the legal part of the business. And there's other states that had already passed recreational laws, and I'd kind of seen what had happened with those states. And so I started teaching myself, how do I go through the licensing process? And I ended up hiring a lobbyist out of Sacramento through the recommendation of a friend of mine who founded a retail group here in California called Urban Leaf. And he was one of the first guys to ever win a real retail location in California. And so I knew him, and I called him. I'm like, how'd you walk me through how you did that? So he explained it to me, and I just replicated the process. And I worked with the city of Willits, which is where we are today, to craft an ordinance, because at the time, when Prop 64 was passed, California was interesting. I would call it a mistake, but the way that they structured the laws in California was they gave local municipalities the authority to say yes or no to the industry, although it had passed at the state level, overwhelmingly. The state wanted it. The constituents wanted it, but they still allowed for cities, states, different municipalities to say yes or no to it. So I started working with the city of Willits here. And at the time, Mendocino, Humboldt County, and Tri-County made up the Emerald Triangle. It's, the famous birthplace of cannabis in the United States. And I'd been in cultivation for so long that I wanted to transition into something different. And at the time, concentrates were of high value, and I liked the fact that I like reading history books a lot, and I read a handful of books on what happened with alcohol. You know, when alcohol transitioned from an illicit market to a legal market, how long that process took. And you had early days, you had moonshine, you know, and then fast forward to where it is today, and you have hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of wine and spirits at different percentage levels and all that. And I definitely feel like cannabis is on that same path, and concentrates provide a unique opportunity to preserve value, where with flower products, it's not the same. Once you harvest the product, it degrades relatively quickly. So I think that for long term, you'll see the importance of concentrates in the marketplace, especially under federal legalization, is products need to sit on a shelf for 6 months and wait to be shipped into a market that is unable to make the types of products that we make here in California. There's going to be long-term value preservation in that process.
Okay, so you chose to go the extraction line instead of the flower, but what is your vision for this company? What are you building?
The vision for LEEF is to really be the largest bulk concentrate provider in the world. That's the goal here. We built this facility as the flagship location so that other companies and other people that win licenses can come here and see how we do it at scale. You know, I think that we're probably one of the biggest extraction companies for cannabis in the world at this point. Definitely in the state of California, I'd say we're top 1, 2, or 3. And when you take into account that we focus on 3 primary extraction lines, I think that we're probably the biggest out of because of what we do. And so our goal is to continue to build California, dominate California is really the goal, is like bring on cultivation, become the largest cultivator in the state of California, specifically paired to extraction, gain more market share here, really focus on innovation, and then scale and replicate that business in other markets pre-federal legalization. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to plant new flags in other states where we can replicate our business model to gain more market share in other markets where products go for a higher value than they do in California.
When you say duplicated in other states, do you mean you want to have facilities like this in other states and also cultivation farms?
Yeah, yes. I think this was, call it V1, you know, and I think that when we go to rebuild what we've created here, we can do it faster, cheaper, smaller than what we currently have here. But yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to build new labs. We're going to build new cultivation sites that are specifically purposed for extraction purposes, and do that to gain market share, brand recognition in these other markets. We sell products to like the who's who of the state of California. So our clients are already the number 1, number 2, number 3, you know, top 5 brands in many of the other states in California. And we're getting requests from our clients saying, hey, we really want you to come to, you know, pick a state, because they're struggling with finding the right manufacturing partners for their brands in these other markets.
Let's say you're a $30 million company right now, okay? Let's say you go to, I don't know, New York or New Jersey. You pick a number, 5 million, 10 million. What can you create in a different state with that kind of investment in terms of like revenue profile?
Some of these other markets can be as big as California, especially some of the East Coast markets. So I think that, you know, what took us $20 million in investment to create in California, I think that we could do for even sub $5 million. Because of what we know now, you know, the learning curve, we spent close to a decade refining the processes. And so I think that we could recreate the same thing with less money, if that makes sense. Of course, supply chain is a big part of it. You got to have money to operate the business and all the rest, but the size of these other markets are very big, and the price point of where the products sell for in these other markets is a lot higher than California. California is this massive market, but we're also, from a value standpoint, we're a low-tiered price point state. And where I think that where California is going to shine is when federal legalization does happen and interstate commerce is allowed to take place. Just like food, we're going to be in a position to where we're able to produce products at a scale and at a price point that other states are not going to be able to compete. And once we get it to where we're able to start selling out of the country, which I think at some point in time we will be able to do, I think that we'll be able to take advantage of that, based on where we're located.
When I interviewed Jesse Redmond at the cannabis conference, he talked about your farm, and he said, this is transformational. This is the language that he used. The farm is transformational for LEEF. Why is it transformational, and what gave you the idea to go with the farm? We
own the farm, and it's been a long process to get there. So I guess to take that question in stages, I agree with Jesse. It will be a transformational moment for our company. Historically, over the past 8 years, we've relied on other cultivators to cultivate product that we run through our extraction business. And there's been moments in time where I'd say that that's been to our benefit, and there's been moments at times when that has not been to our benefit. And I think that we're at a point now, the scale and the size of our business, it makes a lot of sense for us to own cultivation now at this point, because we have predictability in our supply chain that we currently don't have. And also predictability in our COGS that is going to allow for us to get more efficient out of our extraction business. So we currently purchase around 125 acres worth of material on an annual basis today, spot purchase from many farms throughout the state. And the size of our permit, the business license that we have in Santa Barbara County, so we bought a 2,000 acre ranch. We spent 4 years going through the licensing process. It takes a very, very long time, and we were awarded the largest permit in Santa Barbara County. And we'll have our DCC licenses here in the near future at the end of this year, and then we'll be prepared to spring plant the fall in 2025. So the transformational element of it is that it's going to give us a predictable supply chain at a price per pound that we currently just don't have. So we're going to see our margins increase, and we'll have the ability to scale in a way that we just have been limited on our ability to do so in years past.
Do you see yourself getting another farm in California?
I don't think that we need another one yet. Depends on how fast rescheduling happens and what happens in the rescheduling process. If all of a sudden interstate commerce becomes a reality in the next 2-3 years, then I think that there's a real business case for why we would need more acreage. But the farm's 2,000 acres, and I think that we have the ability to apply for more on the same farm. So I don't think it's necessarily like a new farm, new piece of real estate in some area. What I would say is, or what I would suggest is that we just bolt on to what we currently have.
So when you bring on the farm, because of you can grow it for less than what you're purchasing. So pretty much this alone will flow straight to the bottom line. You will become a profitable company. So is it fair to assume that then you can use those profits and go and expand into those other states that you were mentioning?
Yeah, definitely. I think that we've done a relatively good job we run very lean and mean in California. For what we do, we cut costs, and we focus on the bottom line as much as we possibly can. The difference between what we'll be able to do on the farm once we're harvesting our own material there in terms of bottom line COGS. Currently we purchase, and I'm just going to use round math here, but we'll purchase a pound of product that we use in extraction for $20, call it round math. We can cultivate that same pound for half that cost, $10, round math on that, and have a steady supply chain. I think the other thing that is almost equally as important is not just our cost to produce the pound has dramatically decreased, but we can really get focused on genetics that perform better in terms of yield out of the extraction line. So when you're extracting 100 acres worth of product, the difference between a 5% yield and a 3% yield is millions of dollars. It's crazy how much it adds up. And that's something that I think that's almost more impactful, is that we're going to be able to really hone in on like what's called a golden batch, between the genetics that we grow and the SOPs, where we're growing a huge plot of land of the same exact high THC product. And we're able to bump those yield and percentages up dramatically from where we're at now. That's going to be very, very impactful to our business versus spot purchasing from different farms, where it's really hard to nail that golden batch, because you got, a few thousand pounds from this farm and 5,000 pounds from that farm, and that material performs different through the extraction line. We'll really be able to get targeted on efficiencies.
Well, that's interesting because, okay, so not only the farm will be able for you to have lower costs, but then you will also improve margins because of the yield by having a specific product grown that performs better in your extraction facility, right? Yeah.
It goes beyond that. I mean, there's other efficiencies that really all go straight to the bottom line. So testing, we spend anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 a month on testing costs. And we have to do that because we source from so many different farms. It's the only way that we can ensure that the product is pesticide free. Well, once it comes from our own material and we do the front end testing on it, and we know that we're the ones that cultivated it, we know what's in this material.
It's $1 million of savings.
Totally, all to the bottom line. And like, we specifically picked this farm because of where it's located, and we won't have these drift issues that a lot of the other farms in California have, where they have like a vineyard down the way that's spraying something that you don't want on your crop and it ends up on your crop. There we see that. It's a big problem in California.
A lot of the cannabis companies, in order to improve margins, they go for vertical integration. You do have one dispensary, but is the goal to get more dispensaries or just focus on the extraction business?
It's a good question. We do have one retail location. What we've been using that for is right now we sell, our main business is selling bulk concentrates to many of the largest brands in the state of California or large retail groups. We use the store as for us to try out new products, see what's resonating with different, the client base. We built our top 50 clients that come in all the time. We seed product to them. They fill out a QR code on something that we're trying that's new. Hey, what do you guys think? What's your experience like with this product? And when we find something that works, what we've been doing is we've been sharing that data with our clients and saying, hey, you should look at this new cannabinoid THCV. It seems to be resonating with people that are coming into the store. It helps us with driving sales to our bulk business. We have definitely looked at different strategies when it comes to M&A and rolling in a bunch of retail locations. We've looked at and entertained all of it. And I think that there's a business case that you could make where it would say, there is a real reason why rolling in a bunch of retail. I think a lot of that, in my opinion, comes down to once 280E goes away. Right now, with the impact of 280, and for those of your listeners that aren't familiar with what that is, 280 is it's a tax law that negatively impacts our industry, where basically says, hey, you're doing something that's still Schedule 1, federally illegal, and so normal business write-offs can't apply to your business. So cultivation and even with manufacturing, we're less impacted because of 280E. It's really hard for retail to actually make money. And so you do need to have 30, 40, 50 doors, and they have to be the right doors. You can't just have any retail location. They have to be in the right spot where you get a certain amount of people through the door. And so we've been kind of monitoring, trying to figure out when is that change going to happen? And of course, having conversations. I mean, I take phone calls all the time with a lot of these bigger retailer groups. A lot of them are our clients. And so, being vertical does help. And I think that being vertical with the right types of businesses at the right time is really where the secret is.
Do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
I appreciate you coming up here. Yeah, I do. Final thoughts. I kind of alluded a little bit to the vision and the strategy. I think that we still have room to grow in California. This last 10 years has been a gigantic crash course. We have a Harvard education on how to scale a cannabis business in the hardest market in the entire country, in my opinion. And I think that LEEF is at a point where we have a replicatable model that can go into new markets, and we can hit the ground running with predictability when it comes to sales because of we've gained brand recognition. We know who's doing well in these other markets, and I think that we do a good enough job in California to immediately capture a lot of that market share in new states. So it's one of the things that excites me. It's like I want to crush my backyard. This is where I'm from. I want to own California because I do think that there's absolutely a strategic reason why California is going to make sense. I know it gets beat up on the capital markets and people think like, God, California's a shit show. It is, but we are a company that's doing well in California, and we have the ability to grow outside of it. So,
well, I mean, the interesting part is that the first 2 quarters of the year, you were EBITDA positive, right, in this hard market. And you're talking about duplicating the model and going to another state. I mean, you already have clients. It's not like you're going to go out and build a facility and look for clients. You already know how much you can produce, right? You already have demand. That's a pretty enviable position to be in.
Yeah, it gives us kind of a de-risked way of moving into new states. We know what we're doing.
And you also know that the revenue is higher.
Yeah. Yeah, I can sell 10 times less and do the same amount of revenue in one of these other states than I do in California. So I don't have to be as big as we are. I say I, but LEEF doesn't have to be as big as we are in California to do the same amount of business in one of these other markets. And yeah, there's predictability there. I know who to call, like which clients to that we can work with. So, yeah.
All right, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.